They said it would be the end of humanity.
ふざけんな!
The last dawn, the last scream, the last drop of blood spilled on a battlefield. It stretched across stars. For weeks, the alien armadas had been closing in, their ships blotting out suns, their armies descending like storms upon every world that dared fly the human flag. The galaxy believed that the final chapter of mankind had already been written, that Earth's children would be reduced to ash and silence. But history has a strange way of surprising even the gods of war. Because when the call came, when the command centers and bunkers across the last surviving colonies announced the retreat, the humans did not run. They stood. They looked into the endless dark of annihilation and made a choice that would echo for generations. If humanity was to die, it would not be with its back turned. The order was disobeyed. The retreat was denied. And what followed would be remembered as the final battle, the moment when every species in the galaxy learned the same truth. Humans do not retreat. The story began on the fortress world of Helios Prime. Once, it was a jewel of human expansion, a planet that shimmered with towering cities, rivers of glass, and trade that reached every sector of the stars. Now, it was a tomb in waiting. The dominion, the empire of scaled giants and war machines that had consumed 100 civilizations, had placed Helios Prime under siege. Its skies burned with fire. Entire continents shook under orbital bombardment. Cities were reduced to slag. And still, the humans fought. They dug into rubble, turned broken highways into barricades, converted skyscrapers into sniper towers. Every civilian, soldier, medic, and child knew the truth. If Helios fell, humanity's last hope fell with it. In the command bunker, General Marcus Vale studied the holographic display. His jaw clenched as the alien fleets pressed closer. His advisors begged him to order the retreat. "General, we cannot win this. We must evacuate. Scatter to the colonies. Survive to fight another day." But Marcus's voice was iron. "We do not scatter. We do not run. If we fall, the galaxy must know that we fell standing. Outside the bunkers, the people prepared." In the ruins of what had once been Helios's capital, a young medic named Lyra crouched beside her brother's broken body. He had been a soldier once, cut down in the early waves. His rifle lay in the dust, useless to him now, but not to her. She picked it up with trembling hands. She had never fired a weapon before the siege, but war did not care for experience. War demanded defiance. In the upper spires, pilots who had seen their fleets shattered loaded into the last remaining fighters. Their engines screamed as they launched into skies crowded with alien ships. They did not fly expecting survival. They flew to hold the line for one more minute. And across the trenches, soldiers shared their last rations, checked their weapons, and carved names of fallen friends into walls of stone. They were not waiting for rescue. They were not praying for mercy. They were preparing to make their stand. The first strikes came like thunder. Alien bombardments lit the horizon with firestorms, turning night into false dawn. Towering mechs descended, their metallic limbs crushing entire city blocks with every step. Infantry swarms poured into the streets, their shrieks echoing like a chorus of death. The ground shook, and the skies wept ash. Any other species would have broken. Any other army would have scattered. But the humans did something the Dominion could not predict. They held. From every ruin, rifles roared. From every collapsed street, rockets streaked upward, striking the towering mechs and shattering them into molten shards. Snipers fired through smoke, their bullets piercing alien skulls one after another. And when the ammunition ran dry, they fought with blades, with fists, with broken glass and sharpened steel. The Dominion expected fear. Instead, they found fury. The enemy's advance slowed. Every meter of ground was paid for in blood, and the humans charged even when there was nothing left to charge with. A child with a Molotov cocktail burned 3 soldiers before being torn apart. An old engineer wired entire city blocks with explosives, detonating himself to collapse a swarm into fire. Medics threw themselves between blasts and their patients, refusing to let the wounded die alone. The Dominion warlords, watching from orbit, snarled in disbelief. Why do they not retreat? Why do they waste themselves in hopeless defense? The answer was simple. Because for humans, retreat was worse than death. In the darkest hours, when the bombardments shook the earth itself, General Marcus stood atop the wall of the last fortress. His voice carried across the comms to every corner of Helios Prime. Soldiers of humanity, brothers and sisters of this doomed world, the enemy believes this is our end. They think we will run. They think we will break. But hear me now, we do not retreat. We do not bend. If this is our last night, then let it be the night the galaxy never forgets. Make them fear us. Make them remember us. Make them know humanity does not surrender. The roar that followed shook even the Dominion generals. From burning streets, from collapsed bunkers, from skies filled with fire, the humans screamed their defiance. And they charged once more into the abyss. That was how the final battle began. Not with retreat, not with surrender, but with the single, impossible act of defiance that would turn Helios Prime into a legend. Because when you take away everything a human has, home, safety, even hope, you are left with something far more dangerous. A human with nothing left to lose. And that was something even the galaxy's greatest empire could not stop. The streets of Helios Prime became rivers of fire. Every building that once stood proud as a monument to human progress was now twisted into barricades of rubble and steel. Towers that once touched the sky now lay broken, their shattered spires turned into sniper nests. The grand avenues, where children once played and markets thrived, were drenched in ash and blood. The Dominion swarmed across the ruins with unstoppable might. Their war machines advanced with grinding precision, each step shaking the ground like a drumbeat of doom. Armored carriers split open to release legions of scaled soldiers, their weapons pulsing with energy that turned stone to molten slag. Above, the sky was a living nightmare, swarming with warships that blotted out the stars. And still, the humans did not retreat. From the heart of the city, Lyra sprinted through the rubble, her brother's rifle clutched to her chest. She had no training, no armor, and no plan. But as alien troops stormed the hospital, where the last of the wounded lay, she raised her weapon and fired. The recoil nearly knocked her off her feet, the blast of noise deafening in the chaos. Yet her shot struck true. The first Dominion soldier fell, its scaled body crashing to the floor. Rage filled the others, and they charged. But Lyra did not run. She screamed, her voice raw and wild, and pulled the trigger again and again until the rifle clicked empty. When the enemy closed in, she grabbed a broken scalpel from the ground and slashed at anything that came close. By the time reinforcements arrived, she was bleeding from a dozen wounds. But she was still standing. Still fighting. Her act of madness was repeated across the city. Shopkeepers fought with kitchen knives. Farmers wielded tools sharper than blades. Children threw bottles of fire, their tiny hands trembling but unyielding. Humanity had become an army not of soldiers, but of survivors. At the fortress gates, General Marcus Vale coordinated what remained of his forces. His command table showed nothing but red enemy forces pressing on all sides, human defenses collapsing like brittle glass. Yet when his advisors once again begged him to call for evacuation, his voice thundered across the comms. Evacuation is retreat. Retreat is death. We stand here and we hold here until there is nothing left to hold. Humanity's story does not end with running. The word spread like fire, transmitted through every helmet, every radio, every battered speaker left in the city. Soldiers who had nearly given up clenched their rifles tighter. Pilots who had thought of breaking formation steadied their controls. Even civilians hiding in the ruins raised their heads, their hearts set ablaze by the same defiance. The Dominion pressed harder. Wave after wave crashed against the human lines. First came the infantry, a living tide of scales and claws that tore through buildings like paper. Behind them rolled the mechs, towering constructs of metal and fury, their cannons blasting holes through barricades, their claws ripping apart tanks. Above, the warships rained fire until the earth itself cracked open. But humanity answered with fire of its own. Snipers, hidden in the shadows, picked off Dominion commanders, their bullets cutting through helmets with perfect precision. Demolition teams lured mechs into traps, detonating entire skyscrapers to bury them under mountains of stone. Fighter pilots, their numbers dwindling with each sortie, still launched into the sky, ramming their ships into enemy carriers. When their ammunition ran dry, every inch of Helios Prime became a graveyard. For both sides, the Dominion expected the humans to falter, but the resistance only grew more frenzied. The more ground the enemy took, the more viciously the defenders fought for what remained. One squad of soldiers, cut off from the main lines, fought from inside a collapsed subway. With only a handful of bullets left, they resorted to spears, pipes, and sheer brutality. Hours later, when reinforcements dug through the rubble, they found the squad dead but surrounded by piles of alien corpses. Elsewhere, an old woman in the ruins of a library rigged shelves with explosives. When Dominion troops stormed in, she lit the fuse and smiled as the explosion consumed them all. Acts of defiance like these spread terror through the Dominion ranks. They had faced countless species across countless wars, but none fought like this. None fought with such desperation, such madness, such refusal to break in the orbital command ship. The Dominion warlord snarled in frustration. His generals bowed low, afraid to speak. Why do they still resist? He demanded. Their numbers are broken. Their cities burn. Their fleets are shattered. They should beg for death, not fight like demons. One general hesitated before replying. Perhaps, because they know nothing else. Perhaps defiance is all they have left. The warlord slammed a clawed fist against the table, shattering the hologram of Helios Prime. Then we will crush them until even defiance turns to dust. But even he felt the creeping unease. For the first time, his armies were not just fighting flesh and blood. They were fighting something far more dangerous. We'll dock back on the ground. The humans continued to make the enemy pay for every step at the central square. Marcus led the defense himself, his uniform scorched and torn, his rifle stained with soot. Around him, soldiers who should have collapsed from exhaustion still fired, their eyes hollow yet blazing. Civilians rushed past, carrying ammunition, water, even broken glass for makeshift weapons. The line bent, nearly snapped, but never broke, when the Dominion unleashed their greatest weapon, a towering siege beast bred for destruction. Its scales black as night, and its roar shaking the heavens, the humans did not flee. Instead, a squad of engineers sprinted forward with charges strapped to their backs. They climbed the monster as it slaughtered them one by one until the last of them detonated the explosives. The beast fell, and so did the squad. But the line held by nightfall. The city was a furnace of screams and fire. The humans had lost more than half their numbers. Ammunition was scarce. Supplies were gone. Yet when the order to retreat came again from distant commanders, Marcus cut the transmission short. He stood before his soldiers, his voice hoarse but uncheckable. Retreat is not in our blood. If this is the end, then we meet it here, side by side, shoulder to shoulder. Let the Dominion drown in the blood they spilled. Let the galaxy remember that humanity stood and humanity fought until the last breath. The roar that followed was not of fear, but of fury And as the Dominion prepared their next assault, the humans tightened their ranks, their hands trembling but steady, their hearts hollow but burning. They knew death was coming. They knew they could not win. But they also knew this, no matter the odds, no matter the cost. Humans do not retreat. The dawn that rose over Helios Prime was not golden, but bloodied. Smoke choked the horizon, and ash rained like a grim blessing upon the shattered city. The streets were rivers of molten metal and fire, yet somewhere amidst the ruin, the human spirit roared louder than the war cries of the Dominion. Every footstep, every heartbeat in the chaos was a declaration. They would not yield. At the command bunker, Marcus Vale surveyed the front lines through reinforced optics. His face was smeared with soot and blood, yet his eyes burned with clarity. From the ground to the skies, the Dominion pushed relentlessly, their ships darkening the firmament, and their legions swarming like locusts. "Hold them," he barked. "Hold them until the last man, the last woman, and the last child has nothing left but defiance." Behind him, officers transmitted his orders through crackling coms. Every surviving human soldier became a node in a web of resistance, coordinating improvised traps, sniper nests, and makeshift barricades. Civilians, armed with nothing but courage, bolstered these defenses, driven by the simple yet unshakable truth. They had no other choice. In Sector 7, a narrow alleyway had become a crucible. The Dominion funneled waves of infantry into this choke point, believing numbers alone would crush the human defenders. They were wrong. Corporal Jarin, barely out of his teens, crouched behind a pile of debris, rifle trembling in his hands. Across from him, fellow survivors, engineers, mechanics, and medics stood shoulder to shoulder, clutching whatever they could use as weapons. When the first wave surged forward, Jaren's voice cut through the smoke. "Now! Fire!" Bullets tore through the advancing ranks. Molotov cocktails sailed like comets, igniting the enemy in spirals of flame. Yet still they came. Yet still they fell. In the heart of the chaos, a young girl threw herself at a Dominion mech, igniting an exposed fuel line with a desperate torch. The explosion lit the alley brighter than the sun, and in that moment she became legend, not for the life she saved, but for the fearless audacity she displayed. Above, the sky was a battleground of its own. Fighter pilots wove between warships, dodging plasma beams and missile barrages. Captain Alara, one of the few survivors of her squadron, maneuvered her battered fighter with a grace born of desperation. Every shot she fired, every evasive twist, was calculated not to win, but to survive long enough to strike back. Her target, the Dominion flagship that hovered like a predator over the city. With a scream of engines and the flash of energy weapons, she dove into the belly of the beast, her fighter erupting in flames the moment she triggered the internal charges. The flagship shook violently as explosions ripped through its hull. For a brief, shining instant, the Dominion faltered. Back on the ground, Marcus moved through the battlefield, rallying squads, treating the wounded, and shouting orders amidst chaos. His presence was more than tactical, it was a symbol. Wherever he appeared, soldiers found the strength to keep standing, to keep firing, to keep breathing despite the horror surrounding them. And the enemy noticed. Dominion scouts reported the human general's movements with growing alarm. "They are not afraid," one whispered into a comb. "They do not retreat. They do not despair. They fight as though the universe itself owes them survival." This was true. Humanity did not fight because they believed they would win. They fought because losing was impossible in spirit, even as death encircled them like vultures. In the residential sectors, civilians continued their guerrilla campaign. Families barricaded themselves in burned-out buildings, but they did not wait silently for death to arrive. They hurled explosives, set ambushes, and lured Dominion patrols into traps of fire and steel. Children, who should have cowered in terror, ran through smoke-filled streets carrying radios, delivering messages, guiding reinforcements. One particularly harrowing encounter took place at the remnants of the Helios Academy. A Dominion squad attempted to breach the building, unaware that the students, now battle-hardened and armed with scavenged weapons, were lying in wait. As the squad entered, the students triggered a series of traps, collapsing the roof and igniting a cascade of chemical fires. The Dominion soldiers fell in droves, their screams drowned by the roar of flames. Even amidst despair, humans found opportunity. Chaos was their ally. The Dominion's overwhelming numbers became a liability in the tight streets, their formations impossible to maintain amidst human ingenuity and sheer audacity. As the battle raged, Marcus received a critical report. The Dominion had begun deploying their elite Shock Legion's cybernetically enhanced soldiers, each a nightmare of precision, strength, and speed. They were designed to break morale, to turn resistance into surrender. But when the Shock Legions clashed with the human line, the unexpected happened. Humans, cornered and desperate, began improvising with ruthless creativity. Traps, ambushes, fire, and sheer unpredictability disoriented the elites. No formation could withstand the feral human ingenuity. Every time a Shock Legion advanced, it encountered the unrelenting will of people who had nothing left to lose. One veteran, known only as Rayla, stood atop a collapsed overpass and shouted, "You think we fear death? We are its children, and you will learn why the galaxy trembles at our name." Even the Dominion warlord, observing from orbit, began to sense the futility of brute force alone. His tactical simulations had predicted surrender within days. But the humans' madness, what they called courage, he called chaos, rendered prediction meaningless. Every strategy failed. Every plan was undone by sheer human stubbornness. The soldiers he thought of as weak, untrained, insignificant, they were now carving a legacy through fire and blood. The universe had never seen a species like this. They did not fight for territory. They did not fight for power. They fought because retreat was unthinkable. Because survival was not a question of chance, but of will. By nightfall, the city was almost unrecognizable. Streets were rubble, buildings were molten, and the sky glowed with the light of constant explosions. Human casualties were staggering, but the Dominion had not won. Every corner held a sniper, every shadow a trap, every human a story of defiance. Marcus surveyed the city from the command tower, now little more than a skeletal structure of steel and concrete. The Dominion forces were still vast, still overwhelming, but the humans had carved a line in the sand, and that line was unbroken. For every soldier that fell, 2 rose in their place. For every building lost, 100 traps awaited the invaders. For every wave of death, humanity responded with fury. The galaxy watched, whether it knew it or not, as a species refused to yield. Humans had become more than defenders. They were a force of nature, a storm no logic could quell. The Dominion thought it was their final assault, but in reality, it was the moment the humans turned the battlefield into a mirror of their own chaos. Every pulse of energy fired back. Every trap sprung, every last act of courage was a message. Humanity would not kneel. Humanity would not break. And humanity would never retreat. The night over Helios Prime was alive with fire and electricity. The city, though devastated, throbbed with a pulse only humans could generate, the pulse of unyielding will. From the shattered skyline to the cratered streets, survivors moved like shadows, striking without hesitation, vanishing before the Dominion could respond. In the command tower, Marcus Vale's face was illuminated by the flickering glow of monitors. Data streams highlighted enemy movements, weak points in their formations, and potential choke points. But Marcus did not rely solely on tech. He trusted instinct, experience, and the unparalleled unpredictability of human nature. "They think they have us cornered," he muttered to his officers. "They have no idea they are walking into the storm we've been building." A human strategy had evolved. Early resistance had been reactive, survival-focused, but now it had transformed into controlled chaos. The Dominion's initial confidence was cracking. Supply lines were disrupted, reinforcements ambushed, and morale faltering in the face of human audacity in the ruins of Sector 12. A small squad led by Sergeant Kale had taken control of a high-rise overlooking the main avenue. From this vantage point, they could rain destruction upon the Dominion's advancing columns. Using salvaged weaponry and makeshift explosives, they transformed every street into a gauntlet, every intersection a battlefield trap. Kale shouted, "Fire everything! Let them feel what it means to face humans who will not die quietly." Bullets tore through mech armor, grenades erupted with fury, and the humans moved like shadows between explosions, reappearing to strike again. Dominion forces found themselves outmaneuvered by creatures they considered weak, their numbers failing against the unpredictability of human tactics. Meanwhile, Captain Elara led a squadron of surviving fighter pilots on a daring orbital maneuver. They weaved between warships, drawing fire while delivering crippling strikes against supply shuttles and orbital artillery. Every hit destabilized the Dominion's battle plan, forcing them to react rather than dominate. Alara's voice echoed in her pilot comms, sharp and unwavering. "We are the storm they didn't predict. Keep pushing, keep fighting. For every human who stands, another will rise. For every life they take, vengeance will follow." Her fighters became harbingers of chaos, demonstrating a truth that the Dominion could not calculate. Humans thrive in impossible situations. Logic was irrelevant when courage, audacity, and sheer determination ruled the battlefield. On the ground, civilians were no longer simply surviving. They were counterattacking with precision. The Dominion expected fear, submission, and chaos. What they received was calculated resistance. In one burned-out plaza, engineers had rigged a network of collapsing structures, electrical traps, and chemical fires. As Dominion troops entered, the city itself seemed to rise against them. Bridges collapsed, igniting a chain reaction that sent soldiers and mechs alike into the fires below. Amid the smoke, a group of children carried comms and supplies, guiding reinforcements to critical points. Their fearless presence shattered any illusion of human fragility. They had become part of a greater organism, a species, united by survival, resistance, and defiance. Marcus moved through the city, personally inspecting fronts, giving orders, and offering encouragement. Every human in his path responded not just to his authority, but to the symbol of resilience he embodied. Soldiers who would have hesitated in the face of overwhelming odds now advanced with relentless courage. In a narrow street, Marcus encountered a group of Dominion shock legions, their cybernetic bodies gleaming in the firelight. They were designed to crush morale and dismantle human resistance with precision strikes. But Marcus and his squad had prepared for this. With a series of coordinated attacks, explosives, and guerrilla tactics, the humans dismantled the shock legions one by one. Each fallen legion became a story, a lesson, a reminder to the Dominion that humans do not submit. The survivors cheered, not for victory, but for the reaffirmation of what it meant to be human. High above, Dominion Command attempted a new tactic, aerial bombardments designed to obliterate the city entirely. The plan was cold and precise, meant to extinguish life and hope in a single stroke. Yet the humans adapted. Through ingenuity, communication, and courage, civilian drones, makeshift anti-air weapons, and fighter pilots disrupted the bombardment. Explosions were dodged, debris avoided, and even the most precise attacks failed to achieve their purpose. Each human who survived became a spark in a chain reaction of resistance. Marcus watched from the command tower as another Dominion ship fell, its hull ripped apart by precise attacks coordinated by survivors across the city. He smiled grimly. "They wanted to erase us," he whispered. "They will learn we cannot be erased." As dawn approached, the city bore the scars of relentless conflict. Streets were craters, buildings half destroyed, and smoke still rose from countless fires. Yet despite the destruction, the human line was unbroken. The Dominion had overestimated their power and underestimated the resilience of a species that thrived against impossible odds. From the command tower, Marcus issued a decisive order: prepare the counterattack. Tonight, we strike not just to survive, but to remind the galaxy why humans are not to be underestimated. We fight, we endure, we win. Every soldier, every civilian, every survivor understood the weight of this moment. Humanity's resolve had transformed from simple survival into an unstoppable force. They were no longer defending. They were claiming their place in the galaxy with unrelenting determination. Across the city, the Dominion faltered. Their formations crumbled under relentless human ingenuity and fury. Their soldiers were exhausted, leaders bewildered, and warships damaged. For the first time, they realized the truth they had ignored. Humans were not to be confronted with standard tactics. They were a force of nature, an unpredictable storm that refused to yield. Marcus's voice carried over the comms, a beacon of hope and defiance. Forward, all units. Push them back. Show them the fury of humans who will never retreat. Every attack, every maneuver, every act of courage became a testament. Survival alone was not enough. Humanity demanded victory, and they would take it with every last ounce of strength, strategy, and spirit they possessed. By nightfall, the stage was set for the final confrontation. The Dominion's remaining forces gathered for one last push, confident that exhaustion and despair would force submission. But they were wrong. Humanity had endured fire, death, and despair, and emerged stronger, more united, and more relentless than ever. The humans of Helios Prime were not merely surviving. They were writing history in blood, fire, and courage, and the galaxy would remember that the species who refused to retreat would not be defeated, not today, not ever. The horizon over Helios Prime burned with the glow of war. The Dominion's final offensive had begun, a desperate gambit to crush the remaining pockets of resistance. Massive war machines rumbled through the streets, their metallic feet shaking the ground, while aerial drones swarmed the skies like deadly locusts. Yet every movement they made was anticipated, countered, and often obliterated by humans who had transformed adversity into weaponry. Marcus Vale stood atop the shattered command tower, surveying the chaos with eyes that had seen too much to flinch. Around him, officers coordinated human units, civilians, and even improvised defenses. Each order was precise, yet adaptable, a reflection of humanity itself. "This is it," Marcus said under his breath. "The moment the galaxy will never forget. Not because we were expected to survive, but because we refused to die quietly." In the rubble-strewn streets, Sergeant Cale led a squad of elite soldiers through tunnels and destroyed buildings. They moved like shadows, striking swiftly, disappearing before the Dominion could respond. Every trap they laid, every ambush they orchestrated, was calculated with one goal: to turn the impossible into the inevitable. A Dominion strike squad advanced along a collapsed boulevard, unaware of the human detritus surrounding them. Cale's team detonated hidden charges, sending debris flying and cutting off retreat paths. The enemy soldiers scrambled, only to be met by crossfires from every angle. Their technological superiority meant nothing against the ingenuity, courage, and unpredictability of humans. Cale grinned amidst the chaos. "They thought fear would break us," he muttered. They were wrong. Above, Captain Elara coordinated orbital strikes that complemented ground operations. Fighter jets weaved between the Dominion warships, throwing fire while targeting weak points with surgical precision. Her squad's movements were fluid, almost choreographed, a deadly dance that the Dominion could not anticipate. Keep moving, keep striking, keep surviving. Elara commanded. Every hit we score is a reminder they underestimated humans, and they will regret it. Her pilots responded with unparalleled coordination. Every maneuver, every attack, and every evasive action displayed the unique trait that had saved humanity. Countless times before, the refusal to yield even in the face of annihilation in the city center. Civilians joined the fight not as victims, but as warriors. Engineers rigged collapsing structures, improvised flamethrowers, and defensive barricades. Children delivered ammunition, guided reinforcements, and relayed critical intelligence. Every person, regardless of age or status, contributed to the living, breathing resistance that made humans unbeatable. The Dominion, accustomed to facing predictable adversaries, struggled to comprehend the chaos. Their algorithms failed to calculate human ingenuity. Their strategies crumbled in the face of adaptive tactics. Helios Prime had become a weaponized city, a testament to the human spirit. Marcus moved through the battle, rallying units, repairing communications, and inspiring fighters. Each encounter reinforced a truth the Dominion could not grasp. Humans are not defined by technology, numbers, or predictability. They are defined by tenacity, adaptability, and the refusal to submit. A massive Dominion war mech appeared, intent on crushing Marcus and his officers. Yet, using a combination of guerrilla tactics, precise explosives, and coordinated fire, Marcus and his team dismantled the mech piece by piece. The remaining soldiers fled, stunned by the audacity and skill of a handful of humans. They called us weak, Marcus shouted to the survivors. They called us fragile. Let them see the strength of the species they underestimated. As night deepened, the battlefield reached a fever pitch. Explosions lit the sky, debris rained down, and the air was thick with smoke and determination. Dominion forces, desperate and disoriented, began to falter. Their lines broke, their communications failed, and their morale crumbled in the face of unyielding resistance. Marcus activated the final phase of their plan, a coordinated assault targeting the Dominion command hub. Fighter jets, human squads, and civilian operatives converged on the location, moving with seamless precision. The hub, thought to be impenetrable, was about to face the full force of human ingenuity and defiance. Inside the Dominion command hub, panic erupted. Commanders watched as their forces were systematically dismantled, their communications jammed, and their strongholds infiltrated. The humans, who should have been defenseless, struck with precision and fury. In the corridors, Marcus and his squad advanced, neutralizing threats, bypassing defenses, and planting charges. Every step they took demonstrated the resilience, courage, and tactical brilliance of humanity. Even when faced with superior technology, humans adapted, improvised, and prevailed. Outside, the city echoed with victory cries. Each human who survived, each strike executed with precision, and each Dominion defeat reinforced a universal truth. Humans are unstoppable when cornered. United and determined. At the climax, Marcus stood before the Dominion Central Command Console. With a final sequence, he initiated the destruction of the hub. Explosions rippled through the structure as Dominion forces scrambled in confusion and fear. The city, scarred but standing, bore witness to humanity's ultimate triumph. Helios Prime, once a symbol of oppression and conquest, had become a monument to human resilience. Smoke and fire rose from the battlefield, but amid the chaos, the survivors stood tall. They had faced annihilation, endured every conceivable challenge, and emerged victorious. Marcus looked out over the city, voice calm but commanding. The galaxy underestimated us. They believed we would break, we would surrender, we would vanish. Today they learned the truth. Humans do not retreat. Humans endure. Humans win. The Dominion, broken and disoriented, retreated into the void. The survivors of Helios Prime had not just won a battle, they had sent a message to the entire galaxy. A species underestimated, dismissed, and deemed fragile had demonstrated the power of unity, courage, and indomitable spirit. Across the city, humans celebrated not merely for victory, but for survival, for resilience, and for proving that the greatest force in the galaxy was not technology, numbers, or strategy, but the unbreakable will of humanity. Helios Prime was no longer just a city. It was a symbol, a testament, a warning. The story of the humans who refused to retreat, who faced impossible odds, and who changed the course of history. The smoke began to settle over Helios Prime. The acrid scent of burning machinery and scorched metal lingered in the air, mixing with the faint, almost sweet aroma of victory. The city, though scarred and battered, stood defiant, a monument to human resilience. Streets that had been rivers of fire and chaos now echoed with the cautious footsteps of survivors, their eyes scanning for the remnants of Dominion forces. Yet always glimmering with hope. Marcus Vale walked through the ruins, observing the aftermath of a battle that would be etched into the galaxy's memory forever. Broken mechs, shredded armor, and the remains of drones littered the streets. Yet, amid the destruction, humans moved with purpose, rescuing trapped civilians, tending to the wounded, and coordinating what would become the largest post-battle recovery in recorded history. Sergeant Kale, bruised but unbowed, helped a group of civilians navigate through a collapsed building. "You see this?" he said, gesturing to the destroyed Dominion machinery. "This is what happens when you underestimate humans. We do not break, we do not surrender, and we never retreat." His voice was firm, carrying a weight of conviction that could only come from surviving the impossible. Nearby, Captain Ilara oversaw the evacuation of civilians from the upper city levels. Her pilot still flew overhead, clearing debris and providing aerial support for those trapped below. Every maneuver they executed was precise, every decision a reflection of the lessons learned over decades of surviving hostile encounters. Humans were not simply fighters. They were adaptable, relentless, and endlessly inventive. In the command tower, Marcus gathered the remaining leaders of the resistance. Their faces bore the marks of fatigue, smoke, and sorrow, but also the unmistakable glow of triumph. "We have done what many thought impossible," Marcus began, voice steady. "We have faced a superior enemy, outnumbered and outgunned, and yet here we stand. This city, these people, are living proof of humanity's enduring spirit." He paused, letting the words sink in. Around him, the leaders nodded, some with tears in their eyes, others with clenched fists raised in quiet defiance. Each understood the significance of what had transpired. The galaxy would never forget Helios Prime, and it would never again underestimate humans. The Dominion, though not completely annihilated, had been decisively defeated on this front. Their retreat was chaotic, marked by confusion and fear. Word would spread quickly among their ranks. Humans are unpredictable, fearless, and willing to endure horrors unimaginable to any other species. For the first time in Dominion history, an opponent had not merely resisted, they had overcome with sheer audacity and willpower. Marcus observed the retreat from a high vantage point, noting the disarray. "Let this be a warning," he said to his officers. "Every species that thinks humans are weak will learn, as they always have, that we are formidable not because of our technology, but because of our resolve. Because when humanity fights, we do not fight to survive alone, we fight to thrive, to endure, to prevail against all odds. Elsewhere in the city, civilians began reclaiming their homes. Markets were cleared, makeshift hospitals established, and communities started rebuilding from the ruins. Children played amid the rubble, laughter cutting through the lingering smoke, a poignant reminder that even in the darkest moments, life persisted. Kale and Ilara moved through these scenes, ensuring safety and stability. "We've won," Ilara said softly, watching a young girl hand water to a soldier. But this victory isn't just about defeating them. It's about showing that humanity never gives up, never quits, and never retreats. We survive, we endure, and we rise stronger each time. The news of Helios Prime's defense rippled across the galaxy. Reports of human tenacity reached distant systems, reaching civilizations that had never encountered humanity firsthand. Scholars, strategists, and leaders analyzed the battle, trying to comprehend how a seemingly vulnerable species had faced overwhelming odds and emerged victorious. The answer was simple, yet elusive to the galaxy at large. Humans possess a combination of courage, ingenuity, and unpredictability that no algorithm or weapon could fully counter. Ambassadors from neighboring star systems arrived to witness the city's recovery, eager to learn from humanity's methods and resilience. For once, humans were not just survivors, they were teachers, leaders, and exemplars of what a species could achieve when united by a singular will to endure. Marcus and his team convened one final time atop the command tower. Below them, the city stirred with life and reconstruction. Fires were extinguished, medical units attended to the wounded, and engineers began repairing critical infrastructure. The Dominion's shadow had been lifted, leaving a city scarred, but unbroken, a beacon of human resilience. "This is more than a victory," Marcus said, his voice carrying over the wind. "This is a statement to the universe. Every species that looks upon humans and sees weakness must understand humans do not retreat. We do not yield. We survive, we adapt, and we prevail. That is the essence of our species, and that is why we will endure, no matter the challenge." As the sun set over Helios Prime, casting a golden glow across the shattered skyline, survivors gathered to honor the fallen. Each name, each sacrifice, was remembered not as a loss, but as a testament to humanity's unwavering spirit. Stories of courage, ingenuity, and defiance were shared, creating a tapestry of memory that would inspire generations to come. Marcus looked out one last time, the wind carrying the echoes of battle, the cries of triumph, and the whispers of those who had given everything. He knew that humanity's legacy was no longer just their own. It belonged to the galaxy. Every system that had doubted them would remember the day humans stood firm, defied impossible odds, and emerged victorious. The galaxy had witnessed something extraordinary, the culmination of strategy, courage, and sheer human determination. Helios Prime was not just a battleground, it was a proving ground. Humans had proven once again that their strength lay not in numbers, technology, or firepower alone, but in an indomitable will to survive and triumph. And so, the survivors of Helios Prime returned to their lives, forever changed but stronger, carrying with them the knowledge that no enemy, no challenge, and no force in the universe could make humanity retreat. They had faced the end, stared into the abyss, and declared, without a shadow of doubt, humans don't retreat.